Muse of Life. One with influence over life or through life. A Muse of Life would be the kind of person who has the most fun sitting on the sidelines. They enjoy watching life fly by and even relish the fact that they even get to be there in the first place. To their friends, a Muse of Life would be a bastion of understanding and warmth, always there to offer a different perspective that completely changes how they feel, and even the steps they take forward. And to strangers, the Muse of Life would be an almost ephemeral figure, able to so seamlessly glide through life and be incredibly profound without even having to try much. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Life would be chock full of potential. The ability to influence how life grows and changes allows for a Muse of Life to affect nearly anything living or dead, raising armies of undead now revivified or imbuing life energy into flora and fauna alike to supercharge them and cause mayhem or even spread peace on the Muse's behalf. Much like life itself, the choice is left up to these newly created species, and the Muse would have full autonomy to enforce that. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Life is a majestic, almost fairy-like masterclass with truly infinite potential and even more influence over that than it may seem. Muse of Blood. One with influence over blood or through blood. A Muse of Blood would be the type of person who has a lot of influence over people. Whether it be a position of power or through a truly magnetic personality, one thing is for sure, they know how people tick and they know exactly how to get people to do what they want. How they use this intrinsic ability to lead people is fully up to the Muse, but when it's used for good, the ripple can be felt by everyone involved. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Blood would be essentially able to sit on high and maneuver troops however they please, able to give commands to battalions of allies and enemies alike to raise whatever the Muse demands. That is, if the Muse had any enemies at all. The real strength of the Muse of Blood would come by them being able to be a true neutral party. Their ability to influence bonds with would-be enemies and opposition would be absolute, causing anyone that sees them as opposition to just view them as an ally whenever they decide. No matter how the Muse may be truly feeling in the moment, what really matters is that no one would really want to hurt their friend in that way. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Blood is an easy contender for strongest masterclass around, because in a fight, nothing wins more simply than just not being an enemy in the first place. Muse of Breath. One who influences breath or through breath. A Muse of Breath would be the type of person to inspire massive change in the people around them. They take a more transient approach to life, where if they encounter something they don't like or goes against their ideals, they simply glide right past it. In doing so, the people around them take this to heart and may tend to follow in their lead more, allowing for anyone close to them to revel in their newfound freedom from what's holding them back. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Breath would be a fierce combatant, but really only when actually provoked. Normally they would spend most of their time as more of a supportive figure, encouraging and enhancing people with their wins to break free from their limits and anything really holding them back. But when push comes to shove, the Muse of Breath is no slouch in combat ability, and would conjure winds as strong as they need to in order to achieve their objective, going above and beyond to direct their abilities with masterful precision to win by any means necessary. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Breath is one of the most fierce and possibly slept on class specs, but it should be known that any breeze can escalate into a hurricane if provoked enough. Muse of Doom. One with influence over Doom or through Doom. A Muse of Doom would be someone who has an immense impact on the people around them in seemingly subtle ways. In the moment, it may seem like they're nothing special, going on with the motions and chiming into friend group conversations like normal. However, later down the line, they may have perfectly predicted or influenced a friend, making scarily accurate judgment calls or having their words stick in someone's head enough that in the moment when it's needed, someone who heard what they had to say would be thinking about it to change something. On the ability side of things, the Muse of Doom would be a looming threat to anyone that they may need to defeat. Having influence over the fabric of fate itself lets a Muse of Doom have essentially incredibly potential reality warping abilities. This would allow them to dictate and influence nearly anything with cascading devastation down the line. They are, in essence, the butterfly effect manifested, subtly changing things that seem to hold no bearing until things come crashing down. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Doom is an incredibly scary potential adversary, and without the correct combinations of class specs to stop them, They may reign over anything and everything uncontested. Muse of Space. One with influence over space or through space. The Muse of Space is a canon class spec held by Calliope, and as such we know a bit more about it. A Muse of Space would be someone who, in a similar manner to a Void player, is usually more of a loner, usually by circumstance rather than of their own want and need. Because of this, they could tend to spend a lot of time in their own heads for better or worse, coming up with fanciful scenarios ranging from daydreaming about what could be to longing for an escape and formulating a way out of their own isolation. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Space would be a masterfully subtle manipulator, able to tinker and change the fundamental forces of the universe to fit their needs and wants at any given moment. They would be able to cause the birth and death of planets, stars, and even whole galaxies. They're akin to dark matter. Their reach is invisible, but they're always there and a constant threat, and as long as you're within the same universe as them, you're really under their influence. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Space is truly up there for one of the most potent class spec pairings, even if one has to walk a lonely road to get there. Muse of Heart. One with influence over heart or through heart. A Muse of Heart would be someone with an enormous sway and power over people. Similar to classic interpretations of what a muse is, the Muse of Heart would be an inspiration to those around them to better themselves. A person someone can confide in for reassurance when they're feeling down or need a pickup. In the same vein, they would also be a beacon for those who may be in a bit of romantic troubles as well, always having good advice whenever prompted and acting like a matchmaker when the situation calls for it. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Heart would be absolutely captivating, able to sway the hearts of anything they please to do their bidding without question, and with absolute control over them. It would be more than just the adjacent simple mind control, but an entire changing and swaying of someone's values and ideologies, causing them to feel what the muse wants them to feel with full force, allowing for subjects that follow and believe in them fully. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Heart can be viewed as an incredibly underrated powerhouse, but make no mistake, when they set their eyes on something or someone they like, they can move mountains to make things happen to get them. Muse of Light. One with influence over light or through light. A Muse of Light would be someone with nearly infinite potential impact on my situation. For many, they're a beacon of knowledge, and for others, they're a pillar to strive to, but either way, their impact on others is undeniable. Because of this, they're known among people as the person with all the answers, and as someone who is willing to share any and all revelations and all things that come along with them. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Light would be in control of an absolutely insane number of potential things. By being able to influence luck directly, they can make any minuscule number of potential things happen no matter how small they may be. To say going against one would be hard is an understatement. You would probably have an easier time escaping a black hole than landing any serious damage on a Muse of Light, especially if they didn't want you to. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Light is a formidable class spec pairing, and anything and everything touched by their light is truly in good hands. Muse of Rage. One with influence over rage or through rage. A Muse of Rage would be a muse in the truest form of the term, someone who can inspire passion in others to take action or chase something they're really passionate about. That is a driving force of the Muse of Rage, the ability to move people to action with just the smallest push. Their gravity can inspire change on massive scales, from riots and wars to peaceful protests and the source for someone's drive to make more of their lives. The Muse of Rage would encompass humanity's drive for more. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Rage would be nothing short of a massive background player, subtly pulling strings of events and influencing people to action when needed. Being able to influence strong emotions in either direction of the scale can lead them to being one of the most important people around. If they deem that either action or inaction is what needs to happen, then there's not much people can do to escape their mood-altering abilities. Whatever the case may be, while a Muse of Rage can be more of a background player, don't get it twisted. When their back is against the wall and an army is needed, an army is what they have, one that's willing to do anything in their passionate devotion. Muse of Void. One who influences Void or through Void. A Muse of Void would be someone incredibly reserved and to themselves. They would be an enigma to nearly everyone who's heard about them, and that's putting it lightly. They just prefer to live a much more low-key life. Ironically though, this can lead to them being a bit more well known for just how reclusive they can be, and unless through thoroughly working to remove themselves from every situation, people will still tend to hear rumblings about them. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Void would be akin to something like the horror terrors. They would live and thrive within the void, and would be able to influence it to their heart's desire. No secret too big and no object too hidden well enough for their influence, and as such, this would allow them to exist comfortably within the space between sessions. And if they truly wanted, they could act as a benefactor to any wary Durst players who may have lost their way, subtly pulling the strings on any number of things that enter their area of influence. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Void may be truly unknowable, if they deem it so, but that doesn't mean they have to feel that way all the time. Muse of Mind. One who influences mind or through mind. A Muse of Mind would be someone incredibly well spoken and logical. Their presence as the smartest person in the room is felt on entry, and people know that they can always turn to them for sound advice. Their logical prowess makes them seem like they can never steer you wrong, and can even help you with thinking pretty much any issue through, making seemingly all the correct choices in any given encounter. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Mind gets wild pretty fast. Being able to influence the way people think on a massive scale such as a Muse could, makes them essentially undetectable to all except maybe other mind players. They could provide any number of harmless suggestions, and they could even be beneficial, sort of like a positive hypnosis. But on a more nefarious level, they could simply toy with their victims, driving them to pure, unstoppable insanity over time by simply making them imagine things that aren't there. A potent effect the more patient the Muse of Mind is. Whatever the case may be, a Muse of Mind has a lot of room to grow, and it just so happens that a majority of that may be in your subconscious. Muse of Time. One who influences time or through time. A Muse of Time would be an almost primal force of the universe. Having influence over time implies that they sit above the normal flow of time in some way, and as such, this would color the Muse's attitude towards life. A Muse of Time would be a lot more apathetic about events happening now, because from their perspective, everything has already happened and will happen according to plan. Because of this, the Muse of Time can come off as a cold and unfeeling entity, when really trying to fight the flow of time just isn't something that's always possible. On the ability side of things though is when things get interesting. A Muse of Time may not be able to fight the flow of time, but they can certainly direct it. A Muse of Time would be able to play around with time on a fundamental level. Things like changing the length of seconds or creating multiple branching timelines with no drawbacks. They could change events in ways that it makes it seem like there was really never any other chance, and their influence would be unseen to anyone but themselves. Not to mention being able to smooth over paradoxes, no one would really even be the wiser that anything would have changed. Whatever the case may be, a Muse of Time is a formidable ally. Having access to and influence over time itself is really something hard to give up. Muse of Hope. One with influence over hope or influence through hope. The Muse, like Lord, is one of the master classes, which means they're pretty damn crazy. A Muse of Hope would be someone whose inspiration knows no bounds. They provide meaning in other ways that may never be understood to people, and could even persuade the most staunch non-believers to give something a try. They would be leaders, and good ones at that, able to manifest what their people want and provide the hope they're actually looking for. On the ability side of things, a Muse of Hope would be a non-combatant, and instead would be more like a patron in D&D. The more you worship and show devotion and believe in them, the stronger you would become and the greater their power grows in turn. It's a self-fulfilling loop and one that's not easily broken due to the nature of hope. Whatever the case may be, the Muse of Hope would be one mythologic person, truly an incredible force all around. Just hope they're not opposing you with their legions.